So let's have a closer look at how these button prefabs are actually constructed. So if we expand this bit of the hierarchy here, just this triangle here, we can see that we've got a few components that builds up the button. And one of the most obvious things that we probably want to do here is change this text called button, because that's a bit generic, right? In this case, this is the button that turns off the Elmo painting, so maybe we want to say Elmo off. And you can see that this is just a text component that's attached to the button, and you can move that around. That's just the text that's determining that label there. That can be anything that you want. We also have this graphics component in here, and all this is just a mesh that's a scaled cube with a yellow material. We can change that to anything that we want. So let's say we had, let's look for a material inside our project. Let's just call this red. Let's say solid red or something. If we drag that in, now that becomes, instead of yellow, that's just red now. And one thing to notice about this graphics thing here is that it's perfectly aligned to this other thing called the interaction box. So the idea here is that the graphics, what the player sees as the button, actually really is the button. Now there's a few reasons why it's been set up this way. I'll explain it by making an even more basic button. So let's just go ahead and make a primitive object, let's say a cube. So that's our cube. Let's put it out there so we can interact with it. And then let's add a component called the basic interactable general. This is the same interactable general component that we see at the top of the button, and it's essentially the same idea. But we don't have all these other fancy schmancy constructions. It really is just this cube. It doesn't have a label, but it functions in the same way. So if we said that we wanted to turn off Elmo, we just do exactly the same thing. Press play on that. And now this primitive cube functions exactly the same way as this button, but it doesn't have all the accoutrements. So like this button here, we can scale independently and nothing weird happens. One more thing to note about how this button prefab is constructed is that there is actually some event relaying going on. So if we have a look at the very top, this actually has no direct ability to know what's going on in the world. The way it does anything at all is through this interaction box. But the reason why the events up here still keep working is because this interaction box has set the events of this interactable general as a relay. So we need to be really careful about this because we might end up making a loop. But really the thing to know about this setup is that any events that this object is getting is being passed on to the event relay. In this case, it's just the settings at the top. And that's essentially just done as a convenience. But we need to be very careful that we don't end up making a loop. That's why I've put in a little special label in here saying it's an advanced setting and to be careful. Because if we're not careful and loop back the relay, we could crash the program. So now what's happening here is this is sending events over to this guy here, and then if we relay it back to the interaction box, they're just basically sending events to each other, and then instead of the game running smoothly, it doesn't run at all. So look at what happens. So it's fine right now, but when we press the button, Unity crashed. It's like frozen now. And after a while, we end up with a Stack Overflow. So that's not good. Just be careful with that.